This was a really interesting topic for me. We're talking addiction to start things off. It is a beast with tornado force, and it takes, I think, incredibly real brave warriors to face it head on. And it also comes in various forms. My guest today is Sarah Roberts. She's someone who has not only faced her demons head on, but then decided to be able to help others to be able to face theirs. So she found sobriety at 29 and emerged as well with a newfound love and knowledge for health and wellness and fitness. And she's written about it in her books and her blog, and she talks about it. So we are going to have a pretty fascinating podcast in front of us. This is episode 24 of Living Your Life with Leanne Lang, the podcast brought to you by Extension Marketing. And of course, you can always head to Extension Marketing for more information. Sarah, it's so good to see you.
I'm so happy to be here.
And this is a different format for us because we did meet on the set of CTV Morning Live, and I think it was for the book. The 28-day Kick Your Sugar Challenge. Yes. Did I get it right? Because it is a mouthful.
It's a mouthful. The 28-day Kick the Sugar Challenge.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's when we met.
That is when we met.
That's not when your story starts.
That is not when I was 29. No. And I guess my story started way before I was 29. But yeah, so you touched on an addiction, and I think that's probably where we'll kind of start.
Let's start there, I think, because it leads us into the addiction of alcohol. But
Definitely.
then it kind of, I think, will emerge into something that the everyday person is going to realize affects them as well.
So I was someone who, as a kid, I think I never felt really like I belonged. Like I never really felt connected to my mother. And this is never about pointing fingers. And my mother and I have had a lot of conversations about this. And she knows that there was a part that she played in that as well. And then there was also just the fact that that's just sometimes life. And so my mother wasn't necessarily mothered in the way that she might have needed to have been mothered when she was a little girl. And so she just really did what she knew how to do. And it took me a long time to come to a place of forgiveness with my mother and to realize that she was just a human woman doing the best that she could.
Oh, I'm going to go back a little bit more. Like, where are you from? I've just known you from here in the States, but where's home?
Great question. Home is in this body, to be honest with you. I feel that way because I don't really have a sense of where home is. I was born near Toronto. I lived there for several years. I moved to the United Kingdom as a young girl. I was there for 3 years. I moved back to Toronto and then had another move within the GTA. And then I moved to Ottawa. And I lived here when I was 9 till I was 14. And I loved living in this city. And I really felt like I started to develop an identity here and a group of friends who were really supportive.
Right. Like, I mean, I can understand it as, you know, in the early formative years, like, you know, you're in daycares and you're in kindergarten, like those years you kind of learn social skills. But I can see at 9 being able to then feel I'm going to be here. I have a chance to kind of nurture these friendships. So, okay, 9 to 14, where in the city? Like, where at school?
In the East End. And it's so funny that you asked. Roger and I, my partner Roger, we love to go bike riding. And the other day we just threw the hitch on the back of our vehicle and took our bikes to Rothwell Heights, which was where I was. You know, I kind of say that was home. That was really where I felt the most at home. So we did a fun bike ride and toured around the neighborhood and just kind of, I went down memory lane a little bit and thought about how I was at that time and who I was at that time and what kind of things I valued and the kind of person that I think I could have become had I stayed there and continued on that trajectory. And yet we were moved at the age of, when I was 14, my brother was 16, my dad was offered an opportunity in Waterloo, Ontario, which was his hometown. We had family there, so we had been familiar with that place as a family, but we loved Ottawa. We did not want to move, and it was a really tough time. And my brother took it exceptionally hard. He was 16, I was 14. He just was in his first committed relationship. He had just started driving, really tough on him. And I think when we moved to Waterloo, I hid a lot of the pain that I was feeling. I felt guilty raising how upset I was about moving because I could see how open my brother was about how upset he was about moving. And so
you didn't want to be the second child to add in on the...
I wanted to kind of give my dad a break a little bit. I knew he felt guilty. I knew he did not want to move us. We loved Ottawa. It was the last thing that he wanted to do. But it was the recession. It was the late 80s. He needed to feed his family. He was 40 years old. And I'm now 45. And I look back at that time and I look back at the man that he was and the decision that he had to make in that moment. How could I not forgive him? He was 40. I feel like that's such a baby now. Like I'm sitting here like, oh my gosh, these little 40-year-olds, you know? And I just think he needed to be given more of a break. And so I was the one that I really just hid my feelings. And unfortunately what happened is instead of telling my parents the truth, again, I never really felt bonded with my mother, never really felt like I could come to her and share with her what was going on with me. So I just tucked it all inside. And so I'd been a kid that was always a sugar eater. I would do it in secret sometimes. I would sneak chocolate. My parents entertained a lot and got a lot of chocolate as hostess gifts. And so I would go downstairs to the freezer where my mother would keep it, and I would sneak it. So I would sneak chocolate as a young kid. And then so fast forward to now, we moved to Waterloo, and I'm now sort of untethered, really not sure what's going on in my life, and really not wanting to share with my parents, or feeling like I could share with my parents how hard it was on me too. I could see how hard it was on my brother, but it was hard on me too. And so I started getting in with a crowd of smokers and pot smokers and drinkers, because they were the ones that accepted me. And I felt like that was kind of where I could fit in easily.
I'm thinking you're in this new stage, in this new environment, and longing, I'm sure, for what the kids were like between that 9 to 14, which I have a sense were much different, probably kind of free-spirited and active and healthier. And so were you were you upset that when you're in this crowd at that moment, like kind of, how did I end up here already so quickly?
Great question. I think in my 14-year-old mind, I don't know if that even factored in. I think what I really wanted was connection. I really believe that the opposite of addiction is connection. And I was seeking connection. I was looking for it anywhere, and I didn't feel like I fit in with, and nothing against Ottawa, but or Waterloo or any city or anywhere you go, but it's like when you've had friends since kindergarten, it's hard for a newcomer to be able to break in. And at 14 years of age, I just really felt like no one was sort of opening up their doors wide enough for me to be able to express myself and be who I was. And I was really struggling with identity anyway, really not knowing who I was. And so it was just easier for me to hang out with the bad crowd, with the kids that, my parents didn't want me to hang out with.
But like we're the same age. I think there's like a year between us.
Yeah.
But I just remember like the smoking section was just like, oh, like you don't go by the smoking section if you're not in the smoking section. Totally. And usually they were a lot of dark black colors. And, like I was in high school. Like I remember, those years there. So did it just easily become smoking to weed to alcohol? Like it was just an easy transition from one to the next?
Definitely. And really for me, it was as soon as I took that first taste of alcohol, that was it for me. I was 15. A group of us had decided to go out for Halloween, which was kind of ridiculous because we were 15 and we knew that it was too old for us to be trick-or-treating. But a bunch of the kids that I was around with were trick-or-treating almost as a joke, just to get the candy. And the rest of us were following but drinking. And so I was concealing a Mickey of vodka in my lumberjack style jacket with my jeans. That was the kind of outfit that I was wearing at the time. So yes, I definitely fit in with the smoker crowd. And yeah, we were walking around the neighborhood drinking, and I just remember that feeling of that the taste of it was disgusting. I knew that it didn't taste good. It was straight vodka. And so I knew it didn't taste good, but it was the feeling. It was just that feeling of it going down and that warmth that I felt, and then just sort of the softening of the edges. And the feeling that I could say what I wanted to say, and I could maybe be who I wanted to be, and I could attract the attention of boys, and I could just feel the way that I wanted to feel. And so it felt really good for me. So right away, I knew alcohol was my thing.
So you're 15.
15.
So underage.
Yep.
Where are you sneaking the Mickey of Vodka from?
Great question. No clue. No idea. I mean, this is back in the...
it's one thing to steal candy from the fridge,
yes.
And sneak that back into your bedroom. It's another one to be able to find and sneak.
Yeah, I mean...
As much alcohol as you would have needed to be able to, at that point, start drinking more readily.
So at 15, I wasn't drinking regularly. I would drink probably like a lot of kids did that started experimenting with alcohol and drugs in their early teens. It would be weekends or when I could. And I imagine that we had friends that had fake IDs. I know I ended up getting a fake ID, so I'm sure that we just got people to get the booze for us. And then probably stealing it from our parents. I know I definitely stole alcohol from my parents. It was a little later on that I started doing that. But I know that, my drinking ramped up, but it really didn't become daily drinking until I was probably 19 or 20.
What happened then? Like, what was... You're out of high school at that point. So
So in high school, sort of last year of high school, I'm definitely drinking 3 or 4 times a week. I'm drinking every weekend for sure. There's no point to go to parties without getting drunk. There's no reason for for just having a couple of drinks. To me, that was the whole thing. It was just always so crazy to me for people that could have like 1 or 2 beers. It was like, what is the point of that? And I still will look at people and think, oh my God, I can't believe there are people in the world that can have 1 glass of wine. Like, and just love that 1 glass of wine. And that's all they want to have, and not be like, but wait a minute.
I like the 2 glasses of wine. But then after that, I'm like, I weigh the consequence, right? I'm like, how do I feel like, being sick tomorrow or having a massive headache, or do I feel like, so, it's just a different mindset, and
it's a different mindset.
But listen, I wasn't dealing with an addictive, or having a substance that was taking control of me. So it's different. Because sometimes I look at that and be like, why didn't they just stop at 2? Now they're just off, on a tangent. So the addicted mind is
it's a different mind. It's a different brain. We know that addiction changes our brain, and I think that there are people that are hardwired for addiction. There are other people that just don't seem to have to let it rattle their life. But at the same time, Russell Brand just wrote a book recently, and he talks about the fact that we are all addicted to something. And we can point to the person drinking alcohol, but what about the person eating junk food every day? What about the person, like numbing and soothing their emotions with food? And what about the person that's on social media 24/7, or the person playing video games, or shopping addiction? I mean, I have friends that literally, they're like, they take an Ambien, and in the morning there are packages from Amazon, and they're like, no clue, don't remember ordering these things.
That's interesting to say. I believe that.
Yeah, we all have our
something.
Stuff. We do. We do. And my thing was alcohol.
Okay, so we're 19, 20 at this point when there's a real issue, like that it's out of control.
Yeah, that's when I start to really know.
Are you talking to your mom? Like, do your parents notice this behavior? Have they been calling you out on it? Are you being grounded? Like, what is happening during this time?
Great questions. So I think a big part of my desire to drink so young was because I couldn't wait to be able to drink with my parents. I couldn't wait to be able to connect with them on a deeper level. And I felt like smoking cigarettes and drinking alcohol were my inroads. That's how I could connect with them. In every house we had, ever since we lived in the UK, my parents built a pub in our home. And I'm not talking just a little room. We always lived in beautiful homes. And so we're talking like, a huge room in the basement that looks like any awesome pub you've ever been to in the city of Ottawa or the United Kingdom. So dartboards and pool tables and fireplaces and tapestry and bars and jiggers and kegs. And it was a pretty amazing place. And we glorified drinking in our home. We celebrated with alcohol all the time. That was what we did. And
would you think that your parents, like if you look in the situation, did your parents have an issue? Like,
So my father is, he's passed away now. He died 6 years ago, and we sent my dad to treatment a year before he passed away. So I wish he had had more time to be able to enjoy sobriety, because he did not enjoy sobriety. It wasn't something that I think he did for enough of the reasons that included himself. He did it, I think, so much to appease other people, his family.
He would have seen your journey, right? Like he would have seen. Yeah. Was he proud of you?
Oh, so proud of me. So proud of me. And to the point where when I first got sober 16 years ago, when I was 29, I got sober. And so when I first got sober, I think it was a year and a half or 2 years later, my parents actually, right when I got sober, my dad admitted to me that same day when I told them about my rock bottom. I don't know if you want to go into my rock bottom, but I had to share with them my rock bottom. And on that same day, my dad shared with me that he had been diagnosed with depression. So it was a really tough moment in our lives, because I'm sitting there like, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, I'm trying to fucking save my life. And you are telling me something really deep and really personal and really hard and really shameful. And I am too. And I got to save my life. And I know you've got to save yours. And I can't save yours right now. Like, I can't give any more than I am giving to myself. I was so depleted at that time. I was so, my addiction had taken so much from me. And I knew that if I was ever going to ever be able to come back or ever be able to create a life, I knew that I could not focus on anybody else but me. So
okay,
so going back to what you were saying about my dad, was he supportive? And oh my gosh, like, so a few years after I got sober, he did try to get sober, but alone, but on his own. And what happened was, because he had been medicated for depression, but was still drinking, he was essentially leveled out. He wasn't really being medicated. And then when he stopped drinking, now he's taking the antidepressant, but it wasn't doing what it was supposed to do. My father was still extremely depressed and became even more depressed. And they call it dry drunk. I hate that term, but it's the idea, it's the notion that you just give up alcohol and you don't do anything else or bring anything else into your life to take its place. And we don't quit habits, we replace behaviors. And so for me, what I did, and we'll get to this, I'm sure, as we chat, like, I changed everything in my life. And my dad changed one thing. He took out the alcohol. And so it just didn't work for him. It just didn't stick. And so then many years later, he went to treatment.
And this is where I'm hoping that your story sticks with people who don't have to experience the dry drunk, or not finding how that behavior is going to have that shift, or finding that meaning in other things.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're leaving you at like drinking with your parents and having this really cool house and these bars in the house.
Yeah.
But you're like 19, 20 at the time. Then you've got a 10-year stretch. Of like, what are you doing? Are you working? Are you pretending that you have like a balanced life?
Oh, my God, Oh my God, yeah. I am so high functioning. Like, I didn't get fired from jobs. I got promoted. Like, I was being groomed to become partner of the firm I was working with when I hit my rock bottom. And my rock bottom was a DUI. And I needed my car to work. And so I had to say to my boss at the time, who was, we had such a fabulous relationship. I just had to say to him, I've decided to go back to business school, and so I'm quitting, and I'm giving 2 weeks notice, and I'm going to give all my files to my colleagues. So I'm just going to stay in the office because I can't drive. And I'm just going to stay in the office, and I'm just going to take care of business here. And thank you so much for all of these great years and all this great time and experience. And I love you to death, but I'm going to move on. And he was devastated. He was like, what are you talking about?
Okay. You get so you're drinking and driving.
I'm drinking and driving daily. And it is
are we talking like, leaving the pub at 11 o'clock at night? Or are we talking it could be during the day? And
no, so I was never a daily drinker. Yeah. I was definitely high functioning. So my rules around drinking were many. I didn't drink until 5 o'clock unless it was the weekend, unless there was a reason, unless it was a party, unless I stayed overnight. Then we could start in the morning, on the weekend.
You had rules.
I had lots of rules. But definitely not a day drinker. Okay. Definitely somebody who hid my addiction.
Yeah.
To the point where even some of my closest friends were like, "You? Like what? Really?" And they were saying things like, "But we all drink together. We all drink the same."
So why did you feel that your drinking wasn't the same as?
Yeah, and definitely, I guess it was a feeling, but it was just a knowing. It was a knowing that, honestly, from when I was 15 years old and drank that first time, there was a deep knowing. There were times where I'd be hungover, and it would be a weekend, and I'd be on the couch sort of surfing the channels, and I would say out loud, what the fuck are you doing? What are you doing with your life? Who are you? What is going on with you? Who do you want to be? And I wouldn't wait for the answers to come. I couldn't stay still long enough to wait for the answers to come. So I would shove those questions away, hop in the shower, get myself to a friend's house with a case of beer, and away we'd go again.
And start all over.
It was just a way to numb those feelings and that pain.
You're high functioning, you're working, and then you get pulled over. So you get pulled over, you get the DUI.
The
DUI.
Yep.
But then your car's gone.
The car is gone.
So you don't face it. Because you don't go to your boss, who you say is you've worked with for 18 years, and say, I have a problem. This is what's occurred, and I need to go deal with my alcoholism.
No, I am.
You decided to pretend that you're going to business school.
Yes.
You're lying.
Yes.
So now you're in a deeper lie.
I am in such shame about the label of alcoholic. As much as I know I need to wear it, I hate it so much. And I feel such a stigma towards it, and I still do. And so at that time, the last thing I want to do is admit to anybody that I am an alcoholic. Even to some of my closest friends, like I hid it from them. I would just say I was into health and fitness. I decided that I had seen the light, and instead of drinking and partying all the time, now I want to start eating well. I want to start working out. I'm going to start taking care of my health, and this is the new person I'm going to become. And people were just like, okay, that's weird, but all right. And that's what I did. I lied my way to sobriety, but it really worked for me.
So, yeah. So instead of going out and having the drink or having the beer, just be like, no, I'm going to do an early morning workout.
I'm on a cleanse. Okay.
Yes. Hey, it got you, it started the process.
Totally started the process. And I think about it now a lot. Sometimes it would almost feel like a shortcoming, like I faked my way into sobriety. And then I kind of look at, and now that I have my own podcast where I feature people in recovery and all the different stories that I'm hearing, that, I didn't fake my way into sobriety. It was just that was the way I did it. And everyone does it differently. Some people choose to go to AA meetings. I went to a few. They didn't resonate with me. I didn't feel like sitting in a church basement talking about the shitty times. I really didn't want that at that time. I really wanted to learn how it was that I could actually live a good, decent, healthy life without alcohol. And remember, I'm 29. I'm now 45. This was before Facebook, before blogs, before really a lot of people were talking about addiction. Mm-hmm. I had no resources. I had nowhere to go. I felt so isolated and so alone that the shame mired me. Like it held me so stuck for so long that it wasn't until 2015 when I launched my blog, Sarah Talks Food, because I was always talking about food and I was always excited about food ever since I graduated business school, and then I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And so I was excited about that. But I knew that in the first post that I ever published that I would have to tell people the truth, that I would have to tell them that I didn't just come into health and fitness just willy-nilly, like, oh yeah, I've been healthy in my whole life. It's just been my thing.
Because you weren't.
I mean, I was. I can't say that I wasn't. I was a gymnast as a kid. I was super active. I was extremely lean. My mother cooked us very healthy, wholesome meals every single day. My mother was a homemaker. So we ate well every day, and I moved my body every day, and I was a very active kid. So I definitely wasn't somebody who was a complete couch potato transformed. But definitely from the age of, I'm going to say 18 to 29, I might have hit the gym a handful of times. Like it was just not something that I spent my time doing. I spent my time partying and socializing with people.
So you start on this, your boss says, you're going on this 2 weeks, I'm done in 2 weeks, I'm going to, so you found the health and the fitness, and you started to work out and you started to eat better. But what was the transition like? Because this then launches into really where you are today and how you're helping people today. Because then from the alcohol, it became a look at what you were consuming in other ways, and that became the sugar.
Definitely. So what happened is, I quit my job, and I'm pretty devastated, but at the same time, I've carved out this new plan, and that's really the way that I operate.
Are you scared financially? I mean, you've left a job,
so I left my job and, freaked out, had to move from my apartment because I'm living completely across the city from the college that I've now decided to enroll in. And my boyfriend at the time, who I'd pretty much just broken up with, thinking that we just didn't have enough of a connection to make it work, I basically say to him, because he's my only, real friend at this time that really
Does he know what you're doing?
He definitely knows what I'm doing, because there was, I was trying to hide it from him for sure, I think. But there was a night that I was cooking dinner and I brought a 6-pack of beer over, which to me is nothing. That was nothing to me to drink 6 Coronas. And at that time, it was towards the end of my drinking, and I was starting to moderate in a way that wasn't like other people might moderate. But for me, it was if I drank beer versus wine, I could kind of gauge how I was going to feel better, as opposed to if I had a bottle or two of wine, I never knew sort of where I'd end up. So wine was definitely something that took me down a trickier path. Beer, I could kind of control a little bit better. And so I was cooking dinner one night, and this guy says to me, "Are you going to do this every night?" And I knew what he was saying, but I said, "Cook you dinner?" And he said, "Drink this much every night." And I said, "This is not much." I said, "It's 6 beers. Everybody drinks." And he looked at me and he said, "No, not everybody drinks, and not everybody drinks like this." So he had brought it up several times. There were a few times, and that was the real reason why I didn't want him in my life anymore. It was like, see you later. And it was like that with so many other relationships that I'd had. The first time that somebody questioned me about my drinking, it was the last time we went out together. It was just, see you later. I am not interested in being criticized about the way that I drink. This is the way I need to drink. This is the way I like to drink, and I'm not changing it.
So you had been there were people that had called you out.
Yeah, even my own parents, even though, my father was certainly a high functioning alcoholic and, very well respected in his career. just like so many people are. And I really wanted to say that loud and proud. Oh my gosh, if you are listening right now, honestly, if you are struggling with alcohol, you are not alone. I felt so alone for so long. And I know my dad did too, to the point that when we did send him to treatment afterwards, he came out and he was like, so who are the celebrities that are sober? Like, he wanted to not feel like such a loser for not being able to drink. And I just find now that it's so fucking empowering to not have to take a drug. Annie Grace is an author that I respect, and she writes in her book, This Naked Mind, alcohol is the only drug that we have to justify not taking. Would you ever go to a party and someone says, come on, Leanne, just do one line. Come on, just one needle, just one ball of heroin. Like, this never happens. But at every party I go to, unless I arrive with something in my hand, because once I've got something in my cup, typically no one cares about what I'm drinking. But if I don't have something in my hand, it is a constant question. Aren't you just going to have one? Oh, do you have a problem? It's unbelievable. So anyway, I think I went off topic there.
No, you didn't, because I think I don't think you did, because I think a lot of people, I'm looking at that going, okay, you walk into a party or you walk into a dinner, like, it's like, what can I get you to drink?
Yep.
What would you like to drink?
Yep.
You're right. So you don't even see it when you're out of the situation, how constantly it's actually in your face.
We have normalized alcohol drinking culture to the point where we all think it's glamorous. We all think it's sophisticated. We all think it's fine. It's so innocuous. And to me, alcohol is the most insidious drug. It is the one that I look at in so many relationships that break down. It is the alcohol that is at the stem of the issues. It is people using alcohol to numb and soothe their emotions instead of facing their issues. We use it to soothe, and we use it to avoid, and we use it to push down, and it doesn't fucking work. It doesn't work. It works until it doesn't work.
Right. Until you get pulled over by the cops because you're driving drunk.
And that was my second. That was my second arrest, by the way. That meant that I lost my license for 3 years rather than just one, because 4.5 years prior, I had been charged with care and control by sitting in my vehicle drunk. I had been driving, but they didn't catch me driving. And I'm sitting here talking about drinking and driving like it was no big deal. I cannot believe that I can even say these words to you. There were years, over a decade, where I could not speak the words, I drank and drove. I felt such incredible shame. I hated myself to the point that I wanted to kill myself. I could not believe that I could ever go on after letting people know this. How could I ever share this truth with anybody? How could I ever let anybody know that this is what I've done? It was traumatizing. It was shame-ridden. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, to not just to go through the entire ordeal of what my life had to look like. I had to get a pardon that cost thousands of dollars, and time and effort and energy and in humiliation. I had to go through courses teaching me about alcohol and driving. Like, it was just the stuff that I've had to go through to get to where I am today. I mean, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. It really is true.
And just how strong you are is amazing, and how much you've been able to grow and prosper and educate. I think the education of the alcoholism is one. But I want to get in, because I think this is where people are really going to, in just life in general. You started to eat. Yes. You started to give up, move the alcohol aside, started to kind of consume food.
So what happened is I quit drinking, and just like I talked about earlier, when I was a kid, I would sneak chocolate. When I discovered alcohol, it was like, oh, well, this does that same thing that I got from chocolate or candy. And it made me feel better. And then when I was a drinker, I never cared about dessert. I used to feel sorry for people that I'd watch them going back to the buffet table for like another round of dessert. And I was just like, oh, the poor things. Let me pour myself another glass of Merlot. Like, I'm drinking my sugar. They're eating their sugar. There is no difference between us. I should have had no judgment on it. And it's really helped me to release a lot of judgment in my life. Truly, having addiction can do that. And so when I got sober, I would sit at home. So I've now moved across the city in with this guy. He's allowed me to live with him because he lives a stone's throw from the college, and I can't drive. So I need to be able to walk or bus, which, believe me, after, driving for however long, it was devastating taking a bus again and all of that. Like, just the shame is just, it's so thick. Like, it's hard to even describe it now that I'm on the other side of it. But so I started eating sugar. I would sit at home at night after going to class, and I would get a tub of Ben and Jerry's and a spoon, and I would sit in front of Survivor. It was when Survivor was brand new. Yes. It was the first episode. with Boo-Hoo Sue and whatever his name was, the naked guy.
It was the naked guy. I was going to say there was a naked guy in there.
Richard Hatch. And I would watch Survivor with my tub of Ben & Jerry's and my spoon, and I would finish the entire thing, and I just didn't give a shit. I was like, I'm not drinking. I'm not doing the thing I want to be doing. I'm going to do this thing because you can't take everything from me. I was also still smoking at the time. My first drug was cigarettes. I started smoking cigarettes the first time I was 12, and then I really started smoking probably when I was 15 or 16 years old. So yeah, I was still smoking, and now I'm eating sugar every single night. And yet I'm telling everybody that I'm into health and fitness, and I'm super into it. And this is why I've quit drinking, and my whole life has changed. And so what I knew was that I couldn't keep up this guise or this facade without kind of figuring out, okay, well, why don't you try to figure out how you can stop eating so much sugar? Why don't you try to actually get to the root of this problem? And it was kind of subconscious. It wasn't even like I realized what I was doing at the time. It's only now in retrospect that I can look back and say, oh, I was looking at the pain, I was bringing it out into the light, and I was staring it down, and I was like, okay, let's work on this. But that's exactly what I did. So I figured I would read all about nutrition, and I would learn how to quell sugar cravings, and I would work on my fitness and everything else and my sleep and all of the different, the tenets of health that would help me to stop having such strong sugar addiction. And so that kind of worked, and I continued to go through my education and graduated at the top of my class because I knew I had to. I had never been a good student, and yet for me it was like quitting my job and changing my whole life and moving across the city. It was like if I didn't make this education thing work, the whole puzzle seemed to fall apart for me. So I graduated at the top of my class, and I spoke to 2,000 students at the end of my education career. And I could have, I couldn't believe how far I had come. And yet I was still holding on to this big, dark, deep secret that I had never told even a single one of my colleagues at school. And I was close with the professors. I was close with I was a peer tutor, and everyone's always going to the pub and going out for drinks. And I'm still, nope, I'm just super healthy. I'm going to hit the gym. And so I had never told anybody until I then moved to Ottawa by myself in 2000 and, oh my gosh, whatever year it was, 2006, the end of 2006. And I'm still sober, but I'm really struggling because I'm now in a new city. And I relapsed. I relapsed 3 weeks after moving to Ottawa because I'm now alone. I'm not with that guy anymore that's at home with me and making sure that that I'm not drinking and I'm doing well and I feel like I'm doing really well. And yet again, when I hindsight's 20/20, when I look back, I know that when I was planning that move to Ottawa, that I was setting myself up for a relapse, and I wanted to. And I'm actually really grateful that I had the experience of a relapse because I had one glass of wine. I pretended like it was okay to just have one glass of wine, and I went home, and a few nights later I had 2 glasses, and I pretended like I was okay just having 2 glasses, pretending like the voices in my mind saying, you want more, 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 were not there. And a few nights like that went by, and then one night I got really drunk, and it was the next morning was New Year's, and I could barely bring myself to look myself in the eyes in my mirror in the bathroom, and I was just like, after all that you've been through, after all the work you've put in, you're going to throw it all away? No way. And so that was it. That was the last time that I drank.
It's a new year.
Yeah, so it was a new year. 2007.
I didn't realize that you'd had a relapse.
Yeah.
Nothing since.
No.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that you would have had,
The relapse?
Yeah, but the
relapse was great.
Yeah, I see that because I can't imagine having gone through so many of those changes that you did, like to throw it away. It could have been thrown away so easily.
And you can see how fast
it went, right? Like the one drink to the 2. And you see that with so many things in people's lives. We were here in Ottawa. Yeah. I mean, I know that you don't start writing. And so how did the work that you did and all of this research that you did kind of all start to come together into creating what it is that you're doing now? Because the sugar was the massive start of kicking the sugar addiction.
Yeah.
This podcast is brought to you by Extension Marketing. They are a new breed of marketing agency that acts as your virtual marketing department, designing and implementing cost-effective marketing strategies that will grow your business. I can speak to this personally, as I've been using the Extension Marketing team to help me launch and grow my business. Founder Pat Whalen has been a lifesaver for me, a genuine coach, guiding me along the way into uncharted territory. Tell them you're a friend of the show and receive a free 1-hour consultation. Check them out at extensionmarketing.com.
So 2015, I decide, my partner Roger, he had been encouraging me to get on social media and to get on and to start a blog and to start writing about my experiences. And I was just so afraid. I was so scared to tell people who I really was. I was so afraid to use the word alcoholic. I was so fearful that I wouldn't be accepted.
This is 2015, like right around there. Mm-hmm. But you're talking 2006 is when this.
So when I relapsed,
right? Yeah.
So I relapsed, I still kept it all to myself. I was working for marketing firms. I worked for Century 21 Realty. Like I was just working in jobs, telling like one person over here, sort of secretly telling one person over there. And then I met my partner Roger at a networking event, and he was running health studios here in Ottawa. And I sort of was listening to him talk to some people. He had a beer in his hand, so I wasn't attracted to him right away. But I was listening to him, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a cool business. So we kind of struck up a conversation, and I invited him to the marketing firm I was working for, and just to see if we could have a meeting and talk about how we might be able to help his business, but also secretly because I was attracted to him and thought that there might be something there. And so anyway, there was nothing with marketing there, but definitely a relationship blossomed. And he invited me to start working for the company that his family owned. So I did, and I started working in the health and fitness industry. We were training people on whole body vibration machines and selling those machines. So we had 3 studios in Ottawa. And so what I would do is, even though people would sometimes say to me, you know, what do you know about food addiction? Like, you're not overweight, like you don't get it. And I would say to them, I might not understand necessarily what you're going through, you know, with people that are 50, 100,
because you were dealing with people that were obese,
quite overweight. Okay. Yeah. And so I would say I may not be able to deal with exactly what you think, but I struggle with addiction. And so it would be these tiny little guided angelic moments where I would finally be able to tell the truth. And I would just see people, the way that they would respond to me. And it was like, oh my gosh, you know, she might not get exactly what I'm going through, but she gets it. Mm-hmm. And so it was just an awesome experience. So I was able to connect sort of one by one with people throughout those years. And that's when, you know, Roger just kept encouraging me, like, you gotta start a blog, you gotta share your recipes, you've got to tell people how you're healthy. And
okay, but how were you doing that? Like, how did you get rid of the sugar? How did you kind of work with these people who were, you know, 100, 200 pounds overweight? Like, how did you do it? What was your trick?
So do you mean, so when I very first got sober, I started figuring, how can I stop eating the Ben & Jerry's every night? And so I learned that eating protein first thing in the morning was going to be my best friend. So when we eat protein first thing in the morning when we wake up, instead of the cereal or the bagel or the muffin, we then can quell sugar cravings that would typically come later in the day. So it's a really great hack for anybody that's struggling with sugar addiction. Start your day with protein. Kind of flip it around. Sort of have dinner for breakfast. Mm-hmm. You can have carbs. Like, I'm not saying
so that right there is that's your bacon and eggs.
That's your bacon and eggs.
Okay, right? So yeah. I'm saying, like, that bacon and egg breakfast is the way to go.
That's a better breakfast than the bagel or the muffin or the bowl of cereal with milk on it. Yeah.
Right. But then you can go through that and break each of those down and see how much actual sugar content is in there. And Definitely. Did you do that? Did you actually look into how much?
I don't know. I mean, I have since. So I certainly, you know, when you look at a container of yogurt, I mean, it's just ridiculous. First of all, I need to write a post, and I've been meaning to write it for a long time about what the heck to do in the yogurt aisle. I mean, no one seems to know what's happening in the yogurt aisle because there's 8 million yogurts. But yeah, like, fruit on the bottom yogurt is like 34 grams of sugar. It's crazy. It's just pure sugar. So definitely learning that I needed to get rid of as many sources of sugar as possible, especially refined sugar. So the junk food sugar, the stuff that's in, so high fructose corn syrup, for example, in pop. I wasn't a big pop drinker anyway, but for me, it was like, okay, I'm never touching that stuff again. Like, it just goes straight to the liver. It creates, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease in kids as young as 10 years old. So we have got to get a handle on this sugar thing. It is in everything. It's insidious. I think it's the most insidious drug. I said alcohol was. I'm gonna remand that and say that it's sugar and then alcohol because yeah, I mean, it's just found everywhere and it's marketed to kids. It's marketed to kids in a way that I talk about this in the talks that I give. That so when you go to an advertising agency with a pitch for a food product, they will talk about what is the nag factor that they can put on this product. What is the nag factor, meaning how hard will a kid tug on his mother or father's pant leg to buy that product because of the really good job they've done in the marketing campaign. Like, kids don't understand the difference between a commercial and a TV show until they're about 8 years old. So when we're marketing to them on TV, they're believing it as truth, as fact. They need this sugary Fruit Loop cereal. They have to have these Lucky Charms or whatever. And so we just really have to, we have to become more vigilant. I think we really have to understand what the heck is going on in our food supply. I think we've outsourced it to a point where we don't even know what we're eating anymore. And then it's hard because people are working, they're busy. We've got all these crazy things going on in our lives. Not everybody has the time to figure all of this stuff out. So for me, what I really try to do with people is just to keep it really simple. Just go right back to basics. Eat real food.
Okay, so let's take that. Let's go into creating the Kick the 28-Day Sugar Challenge. Okay, so, I mean, you have kicked a habit.
Yeah.
How do you break it down in this book that allows people to be able to kind of get their mindset around it? Because, I mean, it takes time for your body not to crave it. It's just the same thing as kind of, the alcohol, right? Your body has to go through almost like a withdrawal.
Yeah, it's a really good point. There is definitely a withdrawal when it comes to kicking sugar. I believe that just like with alcohol, moderation, it doesn't work very well, especially if you're really trying to make a change. I think when it comes to sugar, I know there are two schools of thought. One is moderating, just being more aware and like not eating as much. And that's really, really powerful and positive information for sure. But for me, and I think for most people, it is easier, even if those first few days are really hard where we're really withdrawing, but or going through withdrawal, but if we can get through those first few days of not eating refined sugar, and again, I'm not even telling people to not eat fruit. Like, we're still eating fruit, we're still enjoying that stuff. Not on the 28-Day Kick the Sugar Challenge. We do take out fruit for 14 days. But in general, I think that if we can cut it out entirely, in a matter of 3 days, you really don't crave it nearly as much. And then when you have sugar, you notice just how sweet it is.
Right. Now, what are you eliminating then those first 3 days? When people are like, okay, they sign that dotted line to themselves.
Yeah.
What in those first couple, 3-4 days are they really giving up?
So on the 28-Day Kick the Sugar Challenge, we literally give up anything that is going to create a sugar response in the body. So an insulin response. So we are also we're getting rid of high fructose corn syrup. We're getting rid of any of the 56 names that sugar goes by.
56.
There are probably 61 or more now. It's amazing how many names there are for sugar. So we have to be detectives in our own lives for sure. But the way that you don't have to worry so much about being a detective is if you eat real whole food that doesn't have ingredients labels. So pretty much we are cooking all of our meals. We are preparing all of our meals. We're definitely not, eating out a lot. And if we are, we're being pretty responsible about what we're eating. We're eating lots of cruciferous vegetables, lots of non-starchy vegetables. So we're not having sweet potatoes. We're not having potatoes. We're not having rice, pasta, pizza. We're not having those kinds of foods. We're having mostly lean protein. We're having lots of vegetables. We're eating lots of salads. We are, after 14 days, reintroducing berries. And then after 21 days, we're reintroducing quinoa, which I love. I love quinoa because it can substitute for rice or pasta, but it's got such a healthy dose of protein.
I think, you know what, and I know you're friends with Natasha
Villeneuve,
who was on with that Natural Food Pantry. Yeah. She's a holistic nutritionist. But I think one of the things and one of the details is when you bite into an apple, it should taste sweet.
Yes.
Right? If you don't have all the sugar, like all of that in your system, when you bite into something that is naturally sweet, you will taste it.
Oh, it's the best.
And then right?
It's the best.
But it's a great feeling because you know that you're getting it naturally rather than from anything else.
And that's it. Like, I think that's really the message. It's just simply, the 28-Day Kick the Sugar Challenge, people are like, oh my God, so Sarah, do you ever eat sugar? Yes, I eat sugar.
But I think what are people most surprised about? Because for me, it's like the sauces, it's the ketchups, it's the mayo, it's the salad dressing.
Yep.
And I don't think people understand how they're getting caught in, I had my salad and I'm like, well, what was the salad dressing, right? That they don't realize just where they're getting tricked.
Yes.
If that's a fair word to say.
It's totally a fair word to say.
You buy a packaged salad and then you look at the dressing.
Did you see?
You kill yourself.
Recently, there was a package where there was an orange peeled inside, and someone posted it and they were basically like, if only nature could figure out how to do this. Like, even along with our packaging, we're getting tricked everywhere. If we really think about what junk food looks like, we think about the packages that are bright and beautiful and flashy. When you think about the cereal aisle, I mean, it's like glow in the dark. And yet, when you open that box or that bag, it's gray food, it's brown food, it's beige food. But real food, whole food, is red and yellow and orange and purple and green and fabulous and all the colors of the rainbow and everything in between. And so I just think that really it's really simple advice, but it's just, let's get away from as much sugar as we possibly can. Eat as much natural sugar as you want, really. I mean, yes, there can be limits there too if you're looking for weight loss and the rest of it, but really it's a matter of just keeping it simple. Just eat food that doesn't have labels on it. Cook as many meals as you can.
What have you found with the people, or who are the people that are coming to you, or that are picking up the book? Is it weight loss? Is it addictive behavior? Is it just to feel better? Is it because they've got athletic performance that they're looking to excel at? Like, what's the typical reader? Yeah,
so I'd say all of those people, and yet the typical reader is the woman between 35 and 50 who is either struggling with alcohol or other addiction as well as sugar addiction, or it's mostly just sugar addiction and food issues.
But that could be someone who, similar to you, is coming home at the end of the day and taking the tub of ice cream and sitting on the couch, or having that extra piece of cake, or and that's, most of it is to soothe. So
drinking those 4 drinks and not realizing how much sugar is in alcohol as well.
Do you go through the mental side of it? I mean, when you're doing a 28-day Kick the Sugar challenge, there's more components to it than just, okay, we're not going to have the salad dressing or the ketchup today, but we're gonna delve deeper into what psychologically is happening.
Definitely. So lots of homework exercises, lots of meditations, lots of different things throughout the book. So the way it's set up is that it starts out just every day. And I wasn't somebody who did 12-step, but I believe in the 12 steps. I think they're an amazing framework. I'm just not somebody who goes to AA meetings, but I liked their philosophy of one day at a time. And so I use that in the book. And so it's day 1, we get started. And here's where our mindset is. This is what we're going to do today. And this is what we're going to think about today. And you're stronger than you know, and you can do this. And then day 2, we build on that. And there might be some homework there. There are some mantras that we go through, some affirmations and some different writing exercises. And I think that really when people can get a little bit of traction in their life, a little bit of momentum in their lives, in anything that we do in our lives, if we can just get a little bit of momentum, that's where the magic happens. That's when we can really start to see things evolve and change. But we need to take those first few days.
It is so hard to get those first few steps. It's almost like, you're pulling like on like a truck, right?
Totally.
Like it takes forever to get those first tugs. But then once it starts to move, it's just like it just comes at you. I think, especially what I've seen with families, is that it doesn't really work when it's just one person.
It's tough.
Making the right? If you just have mom, you were saying your typical reader, like 35 to 50.
Yep.
But that mom's got to be doing it. But then the partner needs to be on board, and then the children need to be nodding. And I find that that's that doesn't get things moving. It almost needs to be like the support system has to be there from everybody.
Well, and that's a great point, because I think it makes things so much easier when everybody's on board. I think it makes things more enjoyable. It makes it more doable. And yet we know that that is not always the case. I work with a lot of clients where their partners, their families are not on board with this. And with a healthier lifestyle, with eating better. So they are literally, I will get text messages where there's a photograph of them on the couch next to a spouse who's eating, Cool Ranch Doritos, and they're sitting there with their handful of almonds saying, how is this fair? And how do I do this? And those are conversations that people have to have within their relationships. That's really hard stuff. I am extremely fortunate that I was single when I got sober. I wasn't single, but when I moved to Ottawa, I was single. And I made it a priority that I was going to meet somebody, that I was going to make sure that whoever it was that I met was going to be sober, and that they were going to be somebody who focused and cared about a healthy lifestyle. Because for me, that's so part of that's my identity. That's really who I've become. And it's not something that I'm able to let go of. So I can only imagine how challenging it is to be in a relationship with someone where you've built up these habits. Maybe you've drank together for years.
You've probably done it together.
You've done it together. You've eaten pizza. You've ordered, Chinese takeout, every weekend for 20 years. You eat, your kids eat white bread sandwiches and cookies and bags of chips as their lunch every day. Like, how do you, turn this puzzle around? And I think that really the only advice that I could ever tell anybody is that, just like they say on the airplanes, like, we have got to don our own oxygen mask first. And the only thing we can do is what we need to do for ourselves. So if our family is not going to be on board, that's going to be something that is going to have to be worked on, maybe through therapy or, through other things. But I don't think that it's a reason for someone to decide not to pursue it. I think that if we truly can look at these amazing bodies that we own, that we rent for such a short period of time, as the most precious gifts that will ever be given, and treat them with the dignity and the respect that they deserve. And for me, as someone who treated my body like a trash can, I let thoughts, people, food, substances into my body that should never have been there. And yet it's only served to strengthen me. And I think that that's the thing, right? Like, wherever we're weak, we can strengthen, and we grow stronger from those weak places. So
could you have told yourself, that 29-year-old self, when you call yourself the rock bottom, that you see yourself in this position 15 years later?
Yeah,
feeling, looking the way you do, and spreading the messages that you are. Like, does it seem like different people? Do you still feel that it was you, just a different version?
It's so hard to explain, and it's funny because I'm so immersed in the recovery community, and we talk a lot about feeling special, but also feeling like nothing. And I think that was how I felt for so many years of my life. I always kind of felt special, but it wasn't validated for most of my life, and so it was like I shouldn't feel special because that would be feeling egocentric, and it shouldn't all be about me. And so I think that I struggled with a lot of that, of feeling special but also feeling like a loser, and I grappled with that. So can I look back and see what I saw? Could I see myself now? I mean, I don't even know. It's hard to imagine. I'm a completely different person. I mean, the heart of who I am is always there, but and all of that. But and so much of my upbringing, I love my parents, and they did such a great job, and but there were also things that weren't done. So I don't know. It's hard to say. Yeah. I do think, though, that at the end of the day, I think that struggle is truly what makes us such better people. It really helps. It really does.
There's the journey when you have reached a certain point, and you reach the climb, the top of the climb. Like, the feeling is just overwhelming. Mm-hmm. I think the fact that you've been able to share it is pretty big. So you have the book.
Yep.
Then you have your Sarah Talks Food.
Yes.
So what's the difference between, and then you also have the sobriety there's a couple of things that are going on. So where are people going for the information that they're looking for? If it's for the alcoholism, if it's for the addiction, or if it's for the sugar, because you mentioned that you went all in, but there are people that might be going, I'm not quite in the all in, but what are, like, right now, like, what would be the top 5 things that you would say for the person that's not quite all in, but let's see, like, give me 5 things that I can change today?
Love it. So that's a great point too. And often a lot of people who have bought my book have said, I just have it on my nightside table because I'm so afraid to open it, because when I do, I know I have to give up sugar. I'm like, no, you don't. You can just read it. There are a ton of recipes in there. So enjoy it for that. There's a meal plan, exercise workouts. There's all sorts of really great stuff in that book. So, but for people who didn't want to start there, I created a course, a 6-week online course called the 6-week Sugar Freedom e-course. And it's not expensive, and it takes you through 6 weeks of video lessons from me, and then homework assignments. And it's not getting rid of sugar. It's you decide where you want to go with your health. It's what you feel comfortable, where you feel comfortable starting. So some people say they wish that I had done the course first and then written the book, because they would have done it in that order. So you can do it that way. You can do the course, and then maybe you want to check out the book. The blog, Sarah Talks Food, is where every week, every Tuesday, I post something that's either about my life or something that I found interesting, or often about food. So today was all about telling people to not eat salads anymore, because of the point that you made, where it's like you don't necessarily know what's in the salad when you go out to a restaurant. And sometimes the calories are crazy. And I'm not someone who counts calories, but sometimes a Caesar salad, people will order the Caesar thinking they're doing the right thing. And I just want to cry, because I want to say, like, really, the chicken sandwich, just ditch the bun, order it with a salad. That would have been a way better choice for you. So my top 5 tips: definitely eating protein in the morning and using protein at every meal, including snacks. And I like to keep my blood sugar pretty stable. So I'm not somebody who only does breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Some people feel better doing that. And I think that that's where using a food journal, that's my another tip that I want to give, is really powerful. And no one does it. And I ask everybody to send me their food journal, and they'll sort of whip it off the night before, and I know it, because no one wants to stay accountable. And it's easier to just eat the few M&Ms or the muffin and then just not write it down. But man, when you've got to write it down, you might make different choices. So using a food journal, if weight loss is a goal for anybody listening, the research shows that if you track what you're eating, you'll lose 3 times more weight than if you don't track. So start tracking what you're eating and drinking. So definitely making sure that you're tracking. So then 8 glasses of water a day. And I know that people talk about calculating the measurement. Take your weight, divide that number in half. That's how many ounces of water you should go for in a day. Sometimes that's a little daunting for people. So I just recommend, start with, if you're not a water drinker, 8 glasses of water. Are you not a water drinker?
Ever.
Never?
Ever.
Ever?
Mm-mm.
How?
How
do you look so incredible? Your skin is glowing. You're spectacular. Your body's ridiculous. Anyway, I don't know how to do it.
I think sometimes there's some scientific. But I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables.
So that's it too.
I think, but I have always been like that. Like, I would get through a 4-hour training session and never have a sip of water. Wow. I get through a workout. I'm never thirsty.
Wow.
It's a weird thing, but I've spoken to doctors. Like, I think that I fall into some weird category, because I have to really force. Which is, to be honest with you, and we were talking about the drinking. Like, I can't drink. I have to make myself thirsty. Like, I have to, like,
before you drink a glass of wine?
Like, yes. So I can't just sit there with a glass of wine. I need to have something salty or something with me so that I can drink, which is why I think also, like, I'm much more of like a chips and dip and a salty craver than I am a sugar craver. Just, we all have our crazy habits, but it's funny for me. But I do see the scientific merit for the wine. I'm not saying don't. I just, for me, I have some weird.
That's amazing.
Some weird thing. I know, it's but
let's not forget that you can look great and feel great, and yet you are dehydrated.
Yeah. So why I don't have more than the 2 glasses of wine is because I have a massive headache and my body reacts immediately. And I know it's because I don't have the, that I must be dehydrated, because I don't. So I was not a good drinker in college, and I was always the one that got sick, and always the one that took me 2 days to recover because my body just wasn't prepared to have the intake of it. But we're getting off track here. Okay, so we had the protein at breakfast. Yeah. We had the food journaling. I think that's crazy, especially that statistics. 3 times the
3 times the weight loss.
Wow, that's pretty big.
If you track your food, we can understand that, right? When you think about it, if you don't write it down, it's gone.
Well,
it's
and especially with the I just had someone had a bag of M&Ms and I took like 4 or 5. Yes. Or there was a birthday somebody's birthday at work, and there was cupcakes going around. But what about like the white sugar? Like, there's different levels right now. But if I just go with the white bread or the white, like, what for you is the, like, I call it sometimes, it's like the white devil. Which for you is the worst of the combinations?
So just any, and I don't mean to criticize or condemn, natural sweeteners like honey and maple syrup, because they have fabulous minerals and there's some really beneficial antioxidants and great things about them. That being said, sugar is sugar is sugar. I get a little tired of hearing about, well, it's organic sugar, or it's cane sugar, or it's, molasses, or it's maple syrup. It's like, the body, the liver doesn't care what it is, what form it's taken. Sugar is sugar is sugar. Our body really does metabolize it the exact same way. So yes, of course, refined white sugar that has nothing good in it whatsoever, obviously we want to stay away from that as much as possible. But really, if we're trying to lower our taste for sugar, and if we're trying to get away from, if there is an addiction here, I definitely think it's important. You can either do the moderation where you're really focusing and thinking about all the different ways that sugar shows up in your life, or try doing a cleanse. Even if you just do 3 or 4 days, that would kind of suck, because right after you get through the withdrawals, which are things like headaches, and sometimes people just feel malaise and just, tired, and some people break out. So it's not fun going through the withdrawal, but if you can even just get through that for maybe 4 days or 5 days, just to see how differently you feel, it's pretty powerful. I think that's sometimes what we need to do. We need to create new neural pathways in our brain. So if you ever think about any shortcut you ever took as a kid where you cut across that person's lawn and all of a sudden that area is really tamped down after years and decades of it being used as a shortcut, that is like what habits do in our brains. So our brain is filled with these neural pathways that are just our easy buttons. It's just easy for us to do that. It's easy for us to have a glass of wine after work because that's what we do. It's easy for us to grab the chips and dip. I know you think you don't do sugar, but chips are carbs, and it's all the same thing. Refined white carbs.
Oh, I'm not saying I don't do sugar.
Yeah.
I do sugar.
But I know a lot of people don't associate it. They think, well, I just do chips, so I'm not much of a sugar. It's like food is either a protein, a fat, or a carbohydrate. And so when we're talking about all of our junk food that we see out there, it's all about, carbohydrates and just eating way too much of it. And so that would be the other tip, would just be to really pay attention to what you're doing. Write it down, drink water, get your sleep. Definitely we need to get sleep. I know Natasha did a great job talking about cortisol and our adrenal glands. And so, if we are stressed all the time and we're not sleeping and we are just feeling drained and dragging, we're first of all going to be craving carbohydrates. So I don't know if you've ever noticed when you're tired, you can't get enough muffins, bagels, cookies, brownies, cake, pasta, pizza. Like that's all you're craving because you're tired and your body's like, I need sleep. And you're like, too bad, I'm working. And your body's like, well, then give me the fastest source of energy. And so you hit the Starbucks and wonder why you're so craving everything in the case. So definitely getting your sleep is going to be a huge benefit on weight loss for that reason. And also because we become overly stressed when we're not getting sleep. And so when we have excess cortisol and adrenaline floating through our bodies, then we store belly fat more readily.
I just wrote about it. Everyone's like, because you was like, you look so great. It's sleep.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm 6-7 months now having sleep. I'm getting 14 hours of sleep a week, and my body is just changing. It's just naturally it's returned to its, it's taking care of itself. And everyone asks me, what have you done differently? And I'm like, I'm sleeping. And the problem is that I knew when I wasn't sleeping why I was retaining, and I just knew that that was never going to fix itself until I started sleeping. So it was very frustrating because I knew the answer. Yes. I just couldn't give my body the answer that it needed. So, but it's funny. A lot of people say, "Oh my God, you look so great," and I'm just like, "It's the sleep." I want people to. For me, it was amazing, and but I think, and it's funny because I was doing some work and I watched my sugar. There was a couple weeks where I was like, okay, I'm going to be more cognizant of it. And when you kind of start to take things out, and I haven't done a no sugar, I haven't gotten to that point, but how much better other things start to taste, and how it does, the cravings do, they do end. Like, like you get to a point, and I want people to know that, like, there's like this aha moment, and you still feel good, and things still taste good, and you still can eat awesome foods.
Oh my gosh! And
I think that
so
people
good.
like they just get so scared that that they can never enjoy it.
I know.
And I think that's the worst way to think about it. There's still life to be had. There's still a celebration. There's still an ice cream on a hot summer day. There are still ways to enjoy it.
Yeah, and that's so true. And for most of us, that is the case. And that's the case for me too, is that I can still enjoy, when I go to a family barbecue or something, I will enjoy whatever it is that's happening there. And, I'll have a bite of this or that. And I'm not feeling any guilt about it. I do what I want to do in my life. I eat really well most of the time. 75 to 80% of the time, I'm eating, salads for lunch, often salads for dinner. I'm eating a green smoothie in the morning. I eat healthy snacks throughout the day. And you know what? 25% of the time, I'm going to eat whatever I want to eat. It might be pizza. It might be pasta. It might be having that brownie or that cookie or whatever. But not everybody can do that. And I want to make that point, is that just like with alcohol with me, There are people with full-blown sugar addiction that they have to stay away from sugar the way that I have to stay away from alcohol. So for them, it becomes a little bit more challenging because you really do feel like you are such a social outcast in a very similar way to the way I felt with the first wedding I went to sober, or the first birthday party, or the first party, and the fact that you don't get invited to as many parties when you don't drink. And when you go to parties and you're not eating, it's that same pressure where people are like, well, try my muffins, try my cookies, try my whatever it is that I've made. And so people with full-blown sugar addiction, it can be really challenging for them to get through. So I encourage them to kind of decide to do a challenge, something where like do some type of a cleanse, get a little bit of time and experience in your new lifestyle, so that when you go to that party that first time, or when you go to that event where there's all of this temptation, you've got a bit of a plan going. And I have something in the book where I share with people my strategies for going to buffets and weddings and different special events and things like that that can be really challenging.
It's interesting because when you know a person struggles, like, and I have, friends that, are alcoholics, like I just know, like to have something readily available or to say it's not going to be this environment, come, enjoy. And I think people need to be mindful of understanding what that person is going through, to not say it's okay, you just have the one muffin, or just like that. The outside world needs to be a little bit more mindful of people having their battles and how difficult it is for that person to say no.
Totally.
Or I'm going to pass.
Yeah, maybe if we can all just put ourselves into, like Russell Brand was saying, we all have something. So instead of just looking at that one thing and thinking, oh, the poor thing can't drink, or the poor thing can't have this muffin, just think about, well, I have things in my life that I struggle with too, and so this is their thing, and I'm going to respect that. So I think that's a good point.
Okay, I want people to know where they can find all of these, because you mentioned, I think people are like, okay, she mentioned that, she says there's strategies in the book, so I think people are going to want to know, where can they find the book?
Yep.
And especially too, if they're committed to kind of having maybe taking the course online.
Yep.
And that's a little bit of an easier transition
easier.
And then going into the book. So where Sarah Talks Food is the website, right?
I would just send everyone there. Yep, sarahtalksfood.com. You can check out the book. You can check out my course. You can just enjoy the blog. I also have something that people are really resonating with. It's called my 14 Days of Wellness. And it's just an email that you get for 14 days with different prompts and different suggestions on how to live healthy. Just different little tips like drinking water. So
yeah, but I mean, in the recipes, is it that they're going to have to go find a whole bunch of different variations, or it's really just about omitting some of the things that they typically would throw in there?
Do you mean on my blog?
Yeah, like you talked a lot about recipes. Well, there's recipes here, there's recipes here.
So recipes on my blog are always just super healthy recipes. If you're doing a 28-day Kick the Sugar challenge, you may not be able to do some of, like I posted a recipe for nice cream. It's a healthier ice cream. And so those would be things that you'd be avoiding if you were doing a sugar cleanse. But if you are just somebody that's looking to lessen the amount of refined sugar that you eat, or even natural sugar, definitely check out the book, check out my blog, check out all sorts of different resources that I've got there that I point you to other people too.
And my last question, just because I was thinking about it, because you'd mentioned kids, can we change the habits? Like if we can get to the kids as young as possible when they're starting to make that decision as to what's a healthy treat and what's a real treat, getting them quickly so that they're not building that sugar addiction as young as we're seeing it.
I mean, I'm not a parent, and I respect and admire parents. The job that you people do is truly remarkable. I don't know how people do it and also get themselves ready and go places and do things and do jobs. But I will say that I believe that a lot of the health future of a child is predetermined by their parents' choices early on. And so I think that parents model the behavior. What your kids are going to do when they're teenagers, that's another ball of wax. But when I see pictures, and I'm really sorry for anyone that's listening or watching that's going to think that I'm pointing the finger at you, but when I see 1-year-old birthday parties with the most disgusting frosted sugary cake and the kid is covered in it, I get it's funny. But I feel like we are feeding our children drugs. I believe that sugar is the most insidious drug of all. And I just see children that are then growing up with these habits that are reaffirmed. And it's really hard, as we've talked about those neural pathways, it's really hard to change a habit. We have to, we don't break habits, we change behaviors. And to be able to then put it onto the kid at the age of 15 when they're all of a sudden like, I am overweight and I'm feeling uncomfortable and I'm not happy with the way that I am, and I am using food to soothe my emotions instead of bringing them out and talking about them. I think that really does rest a lot on the type of food environment that parents set up for their kids. So if I was a parent, and I have a niece and a nephew, so I definitely did do this a lot with them. Pretty much all of our meals were made at home. We would have fun times. We would play. We would go out for special events. And I think that's a really good key, is if it's inside the home, it's kind of the safe haven. It's like when I'm at home, I know that anything that I'm going to eat is pretty boring. It's going to be healthy. And, it is what it is. It's just real food. If I go out, that's where then it's that 20 to 25% of the time where I say, hey, I'm going to go out for a slice of pizza, or I'm going to go and get that pasta dish, or I'm going to have whatever, an ice cream cone. And I think that that's a really good way for parents to set up their homes, is to say, you know what, inside the home, we do things this way. And Corey Keeley is a friend of mine, and I just adore her, and she's the face of Foodland Ontario. And she I invited her to speak on my blog, and she was saying that she doesn't talk about healthy at home with her kids. It's not healthy food versus junk food. It's just food. And this is the kind of food that we eat. And it's the kind of food that fuels us and makes us feel so good. So I think if we can really put the focus on feeling our best and helping our kids to feel their best. And that was the fifth thing that I was going to share, my top tips, is really let's get to the root, to the underlying cause as to why we are filling the hole inside of us. Like, what hole was I filling with alcohol? And before that, what was I filling with sugar? And after that, what was I filling with sugar? And when I finally brought that out into the light, the idea that I really never felt bonded or connected with my mother, and I had wished for a deeper connection with her, what happened then was that I was able to forgive her. I was able to understand her as, just like I said, a human woman. And we have now been able to forge a really beautiful new relationship where, she's apologized, and I don't even need her to apologize, but she said, I wish I would have been there for you more. I wish I would have understood what you were going through. I just didn't know how to have those conversations. I was embarrassed. I didn't know. And so we just have come to this really beautiful place. And what's happened is that, those sugar cravings, they kind of can go away when you're just really focusing on loving yourself. And I've mentioned it before, just really treating these bodies like the temples that they are.
We get one vessel.
Get one. And one chance to live this life. And I think I wrote about it today on the blog. When I eat salads every day, so often, I have had a friend that would say to me, oh my God, I feel so sorry for you. Like, you eat salad all the time and you're always eating healthy, and like, I feel so bad for you. Like, you're missing out on so much. And I'm like, I love it. Salad. I love to eat the way I eat. And I would start to share recipes with her. This is before I wrote my book. And so I would start to share recipes, and I'd say, well, taste this. And she would start to taste stuff, and she's like, oh my God, I finally have realized you're not depriving yourself. I'm like, no, I'm not. Like, I'm living. Like, this is the way to me to live vibrantly, is that I'm feeling good in my body. And I meet so many people that are feeling horrible in their body. Their bodies they're feeling like their bodies are failing them. And what I want to say is, but what have you done to serve your body? What have you done? What have you given it? You've given it junk food. You haven't let it sleep. You never give it water. You never do all of the things activity-wise that you need to do to keep your body moving. What are you doing? And then you have the nerve to criticize this beautiful, precious gift that you've been given? That's not fair. That's not right.
I'm going to leave it on that. Sarah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. SarahTalksFood.com if you're looking for more information. Of course, you're going to be able to find it here on Living Your Life with Leanne Lang. That's a wrap on episode 24.
Thank you so much.